Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something pretty fundamental to this whole AI explosion. It's the infrastructure, right? The actual physical stuff needed to power all this artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
And we're using a recent TechCrunch article as our launch pad. It dives into Microsoft's situation with AI capacity.
Yeah, and it really sets up this interesting tension. You've got the incredible, almost limitless seeming potential of AI.
Right.
Bumping up against the very real, very physical limits of, servers, data centers, power, ambition meeting concrete, basically.
Okay, so let's get into that. The article highlights a Microsoft earnings call pretty recently, right? Where they actually warned about potential problems.
That's right. It sounds quite immediate, actually. During their fiscal 2025 Q3 earnings call, that was, end of April?
Yeah, April 30th.
Right. Their CFO, Amy Hood, apparently said they could face AI capacity constraints, maybe even starting in June.
June, wow.
Yeah. And she apparently used phrases like being a little short, a little tight by the end of the year. So it definitely signals some near-term pressure.
Okay, so for you, the listener, using these AI services, what does service disruption actually mean? Are we talking like my chatbot takes an extra second, or is it more serious?
Well, it could be a range of things. You might see slower response times, maybe longer waits for certain features to load or process, or in peak demand situations, maybe some services are temporarily unavailable. It really depends on the specific load at that moment.
Okay, but here's where it gets a bit confusing, maybe. The article brings up this other point. While Microsoft is saying we might run short, there are also these reports about them canceling data center leases. That feels backward.
It does seem counterintuitive on the surface, TechCrunch mentioned a memo from TD Cowen back in February. It said Microsoft had canceled leases for, I think the quote was a couple hundred megawatts, which apparently is roughly like 2 data centers worth of power.
2 data centers. That's significant.
It is. And the article adds that there have been multiple reports of additional data center lease cancellations just in the couple of months since then.
Okay, so shortage warnings on one hand, lease cancellations on the other. How does Microsoft square that circle? What's their explanation?
Well, according to the piece, Microsoft says these cancellations are not necessarily related to the capacity constraints they're forecasting.
Oh, okay.
Which suggests, maybe it's more about strategic adjustments. Perhaps they're shifting away from older sites to newer, possibly more efficient ones. Or maybe consolidating in key locations. It points to the idea that this infrastructure puzzle isn't just about raw quantity, but also about the right kind of capacity in the right places.
That makes sense. It's not just about more, but maybe better or smarter infrastructure.
Exactly.
Because the article is also super clear that they are still investing absolutely enormous amounts of money into new data centers.
Oh, definitely. The commitment is huge. They're talking, $80 billion this year alone on data centers?
$80 billion. That's a lot of zeros.
It is. And half of that, so $40 billion, is specifically earmarked for facilities here in the U.S. So they're clearly getting big on long-term expansion.
So if the investment is that massive, why the potential crunch right now? Amy Hood apparently talked about the lead times involved.
Precisely. That's a key piece. She highlighted these very long lead time decisions. Getting a data center built isn't like flipping a switch. From buying the land, getting permits, construction, getting it powered and equipped.
Right.
She mentioned lead times of, 5 to 7 years sometimes, or even 2 to 3 years, just for certain phases.
Okay, so the capacity we have now, or the lack of it, is really a result of decisions made, 3, 5, maybe 7 years ago?
Essentially, yes. And back then, predicting today's AI boom, well, that was a much harder forecast to make. So they're constantly in this balancing act, trying to predict and meet demand that's just evolving incredibly quickly.
It's like trying to build a highway for traffic that hasn't even materialized yet, but you know it's coming fast.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And it's not just happening domestically. Satya Nadella, the CEO, mentioned global expansion too, right?
Yeah, he said they opened data centers in 10 new countries and 4 new continents just in the last quarter, which is quite the spread.
It really is. That global push is probably about several things. Serving international customers better, maybe dealing with data sovereignty rules in different places.
Yeah, keeping data local sometimes.
Exactly. And just diversifying their footprint for resilience. But the fact they're doing all that and still might face constraints here in the U.S., it just shows the sheer scale of demand, especially in certain core markets.
And Amy Hood had another interesting quote, something like, demand today and demand tomorrow are not the same thing.
That really captures the uncertainty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
predicting how quickly AI adoption will continue, what the next killer app will be, how much businesses and, regular users like you will integrate it.
Yeah.
Plus, maybe future breakthroughs that make AI models way more efficient, needing less power. All these things could radically change that demand curve they're trying to plan for years out.
It's a massive forecasting challenge on top of a massive building challenge.
Absolutely.
So, okay, let's try and pull these threads together. We've got this incredible surge in AI demand. We have a huge player like Microsoft saying, uh-oh, we might actually hit some capacity limits soon.
Yeah, in the near term.
Even while they're spending billions and billions on new infrastructure globally and here at home.
And canceling some older leases, possibly to optimize.
Right. What it really boils down to, it seems, is this fundamental infrastructure bottleneck.
I think so. The pace of AI software and model innovation is just, it seems to be outstripping our ability to build the physical foundation for it, at least for now. Those long data center lead times mean today's limits are kind of an echo of decisions and forecasts made quite a while ago when the AI landscape looked very different.
It really puts the physical back into the digital revolution, doesn't it? You really get a feel for the scale of what's needed. So, thinking ahead, given these kinds of hurdles, what happens next? Does this bottleneck spur innovation in other areas?
That's the big question, isn't it? You have to wonder if this pressure leads to, say, major breakthroughs in making AI models much more energy efficient.
Right, doing more with less compute power.
Exactly. Or maybe different ways of processing AI tasks, perhaps more distributed computing, not just massive central data centers.
Or even different chip architectures.
Potentially. All sorts of innovations could arise from this pressure point. It forces creativity.
And it leaves you wondering, how will these real-world infrastructure limits ultimately shape the future? Will it slow things down? Will it change who gets access to the most powerful AI?
Those are definitely the key questions moving forward. These constraints, while challenging, are likely to be a really powerful driver for the next wave of innovation, not just in the hardware itself, but in how we design, build, and deploy AI systems altogether. It's technology hit in practical reality.